And so if you're a solar guy, you can really screw a homeowner by adding a heat pump to a solar home.
Welcome to the Flow Lab, the podcast where we dive deep into the science of building performance and HVAC innovations. Today we bring you another insightful episode aimed to enhance your knowledge and expertise in the field. Joining us are your co-hosts, Ben Walker, co-CEO of Retrotec, and Sam Myers, a renowned building science specialist and Retrotec trainer. Together, they bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to ensure our discussions are both informative and engaging. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to enter the Flow Lab, where we'll explore the world of building performance. Let's get started.
Yeah, Brent, thanks for joining us here. I know you got to chat with both Ben and myself when we were at summer camp here just a few weeks ago. So yeah, that was nice just to kind of hear about what you're looking to do with the U.S. Heat Pump Summit. So maybe, just kind of give us the rundown on how you kind of made your way into the HVAC industry, and tell us a little bit about the summit and what you plan to happen there.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Sam. First and foremost, it's the U.S. Heat Pump Summit, entirely contractor focused, covering HVAC and plumbing, and it's November 18th and 19th in Worcester, Mass. So just about 45 minutes west of Boston. So I always like to get that off the start, because sometimes we go on these podcasts, dive in, and never even come back around to tell people when or where it is.
Yep. Understood.
So we'll get back to talking a little bit about exactly what the event is, but it's really for ambitious contractors that want to succeed with heat pump technology, and there's kind of about 60-40 technical and business content. So we'll come back around to that in a moment, but that's the overall sort of quick radio ad there for you.
Sure.
And I just need to work on my radio voice, all the disclaimers afterwards, like you may experience high static pressure after this experience, and stuff like that. But so my background is coming from the solar world, and in particular, really actually building software in the solar world. And so for a number of years, I was kind of doing a variety of things, everything from engineering tools for really large scale, hundreds of acres solar power plant installations. And then I got into really helping a specific founder with a really interesting energy analysis tool for the home that was really specifically designed for solar installers and salespeople. And in that capacity, I started spending a lot more time in person with solar and HVAC residential contractors. And in particular, I got sort of special access to be in some of these kind of private roundtable discussions with a bunch of owners here in the Northern California area. And I'm just kind of a fly on the wall. And I'm listening to all the problems they're discussing, and a lot of them go through a piece of software, whether it's a CRM or it's this energy analysis tool. But it really seemed like 80-90% of the problems I was hearing were really around kind of the fundamentals of how do I run this business, and how do I do really a lot of the stuff, a lot of the technical stuff, well enough across my entire team. And having that consistency in the field and really deploying these things at scale and being able to go from, your 5 employees to your 10 to your 20 to your 40 kind of things. And out of that, I was like, I'm not hearing as much as I thought I would about software problems as sitting there as the software guy. And yeah, a few things just clicked. I mean, I have a journalism background. My dad's in the trade media, in agriculture. And then I happen to know a guy who has a bit of a mini empire in the wastewater industry across trade shows and business titles and business publications. And so I knew enough to know that there's a swing you can take there. And I started looking around about okay, what's going on with the electric home? How are contractors learning about this new technology? And I just noticed there was not a heat pump specific event in the U.S. yet. Some other countries have them. And I thought, well, what the heck? This seems like a gap, and it seems like we could really address, this kind of combination of technical and business, challenges that contractors are facing that I'm not seeing, sort of fully addressed elsewhere. So the first one was a total flyer. I set, a time box. I said, 4 months. Let's put something together. It was kind of coming in the holidays, so it was kind of a natural timeline. And I always like to shout out to Bill Spohn, because I had a pretty crappy website together. Sort of knew what I was talking about coming from the solar world. And I get on the phone with Bill, and then at the end, he says, well, do you have you must be selling, sponsor, trade show booths. I thought, yeah. So I sent him a little Word doc, and he sent me a check for a sponsor booth, modest little check. But nice. It was a big moment, and then all of a sudden I was on his podcast, bought this headset for it, per Bill's request. He's very particular with his headsets. And fast forward, he's a close friend now. Retrotec's been a great supporter, and I think we're really me and team here really understanding a lot more about just this kind of split of how do we combine the right technical information with the right business environment, so your techs are actually deploying building science in the field, not just kind of skipping it at that at the moment that it counts.
Yeah, Bill's an excellent resource to have in this industry. I mean, pretty much anybody who's
Absolutely.
trying to do something good for the industry as a whole, he's going to be pretty quick to jump on and try to help with that. So, yeah, you found the right person.
And I should shout out to his Better HVAC effort. I believe it's betterhvac.org. See if I can pull it up here. But they're trying to just have it be betterhvac.org. I can't do it as justice to his words, but I believe it's trying to centralize, really contractors who are kind of top of their game and really, really caring and being a mix of helping contractors find each other, but also helping homeowners, find really quality people. So shout out to Bill's efforts there.
Yeah, he and Kevin Hart with Haven have been working hard on that. We had Kevin on earlier this year to talk about IAQ, but
okay, perfect.
That's such a great effort. I mean, especially when you're starting from the bottom up, like, where all these problems start, I mean, the homeowner is going to call somebody when they're experiencing some kind of issue. And it's like, who do they call? Like, they don't even know what questions to ask to try to get the right person in there. So it's a good effort to try to help solve that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. Yeah. So one thing led to another. We did the first one out here in the San Francisco area, actually at the Berkeley Student Union. So it was kind of funny getting a bunch of contractors to drive down into Berkeley. But it pulled off pretty well. It was a good event space. It was approachable from a business perspective, and even though it was college campus, they had a lot of parking, and we had some funny snafus with parking in the end. But second one, I had some contacts in Denver for just in the building science world. And kind of pulled me there. There was a lot more going on in Denver and in Colorado than I realized. So, quickly repeated a second one in that same 4 or 5 month timeline. I was pulling my hair out a bit because my deadline then was actually my wedding. So I did the first one in November. Kind of made it through the holidays. Thought, what are we doing here? Okay, Colorado, wedding's in June. All right, let's get it done in May. But it happened. We survived. I got married.
Nice.
And now, so then whatever, fast forward, through some, little bit of time off over the summer after the wedding, and then kind of regrouping and talking to more folks like Bill and kind of re-understanding, the opportunity and need. And so now this is about a year that we'll have worked on this trade show. So we're at a full trade show venue. It's at the DCU Center in Worcester for anyone who's familiar with the New England area. The venue space actually connects to a stadium where they have like monster truck and like big hockey games. Wow. So maybe we'll be able to expand into like the Thunderdome of HVAC in the coming years. It would be kind of fun. But yeah, we're really covering. I mean, it's about 40 tracks of content. Like I said, it's about 60-40 technical business. Peter Trost has really pulled together the business track. He's really a conference guy, well connected with a lot of top contractors, and so that business track is really it's successful contractors sharing behind the scenes, by and large. Sure. Peter's probably one of the only folks who's not a contractor on stage there. It's not come to a rah event where there's a bunch of guys with muscles bursting out of their t-shirts yelling sell kind of thing. And then on the technical side, Joe at MeasureQuick's been really helpful, Voya at LG, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Dan Wildenhouse was really central to that effort. And as most people know, listening to this podcast, we lost Dan a few weeks ago unexpectedly.
That was a hard one. He was a good buddy of ours.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So he was very excited about the summit. It was pulling a lot of great people together, and we'll obviously be honoring them at the summit as well. But on the technical side, there's first and foremost, it's usheatpumpsummit.com, or you can just Google it. If you just Google Heat Pump Summit, there's a chance you'll land across the pond in Britain at the British Heat Pump Summit, which is just heatpumpsummit.com.
not to be confused.
Yeah, but I think we're doing all right. Google knows what continent you're on, so I think we're doing all right. So the technical side, you can check out the full agenda. But Alex Meany, HVAC Chicks, Jennifer, Ed Janwiak from ACA. I'll pull up the site here in a second. I struggle to do it from memory, but really a lot of the core content that you'd expect from an event called the US Heat Pump Summit. But we're also trying to put out a lot of the where's the industry going in some of the startup content. So we've got a great panel discussion with LG Kala Systems, which is a sort of water heater and energy storage. Quilt, this sort of California heat pump startup coming out of Tesla and Google guys. And then a really new one called Totex, which is really thermal storage for heating and cooling. Really interesting technology. They claim about 6 Tesla power walls worth of energy just in water, heating and freezing. They'll make a big block of ice. So when you consider the difference in cost between lithium and water, you're like, okay, that kind of pencils. And then LG, engineer from LG will be on that panel to kind of represent, the existing manufacturers. And it's definitely at this point, it's really at this point, I think we can kind of honestly say like the best assembly of this kind of really focused in on HVAC and plumbing heat pump minds with the building science flavor, with the also business track of it. There's a lot of great events that are going a bit more specialized in one of those. We're really trying to connect both, like I said, because if you have a technician who took a building science course, but they don't work at a company that's incentivizing getting that blower door out from behind Sam's podcast studio and actually using it, or whatever instrument, or even just a line of questioning with the customer. If they're not incentivized to actually do that, it's like kind of all for naught. So that's why I think it's really important to have both sides there.
Sure.
Yeah. So have you seen the landscape of installing heat pumps change over the past couple of years, really? Since you started, have things progressed and things have improved, or has the landscape completely changed now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we would really actually have a better sense of that versus you guys with actually a lot of the policy side. So to be clear, it's not a policy event in any way. There'll be some people from the regional, rebate programs. It's a national event. We cannot host a session on every rebate program nationally, obviously. Right. But I think we see, really just even from one of the first conversations I started having, there are a lot more state programs cropping up. I think we're going to continue to see that as the federal, incentives, at least in this current administration, are obviously not a thing they're prioritizing. And the first one I held, there was a number of folks who are in just community level, building incentive support out here in the San Francisco area, who said, I don't think this would have worked 1 year prior. So that would have been 2022 if I had tried it then. So I think that's one trend, we've sort of seen. And then, I haven't been going to AHR as long as I'm sure you guys have, but, we've all kind of seen the ramp up and where the major companies are promoting, the equipment and, the improvements in the cold climate equipment, really just sort of changing the conversation. I think all the typical concerns remain of, if this equipment goes in poorly, expectations are not set correctly. That does have a potential to kind of repeat, the whiplash, and I know that gets discussed a lot. One anecdote I would give you from the solar world is a good friend of mine who's at one of the largest residential solar financing companies. He said their biggest issue is actually willingness to repay, because contractors don't always set the expectations accurately of what that solar system is going to do. Now, some of that is maybe they're trying to do good work and they're not equipped with the right tools. Maybe they do need that piece of software to really get those analytics about the house better. But so much of it is, really analogous to the heat pump world of, it's not, don't turn down your temperature 5 degrees Fahrenheit overnight or 10 degrees, or whatever. Don't, if it's a vacation house, don't expect it to go from 33 degrees to 70 in an hour, these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think there's some corollaries there, but I'd be interested to hear what you guys think of that same topic. I mean, how have you seen, the heat pump conversation with contractors change?
Well, I think it's interesting that you came from solar into heat pumps, because I think that's kind of like a similar line of thought for homeowners, right? If they're trying to, reduce their energy bills, their first thought goes, oh, I need solar. But they don't even really think about oh, wait, maybe I can improve my house instead, or at least start there, right? So it's like, it makes a lot more sense to like, okay, well, if your house isn't performing the way that you want it to, like, instead of just putting this blanket of solar over it and calling it a day, it makes a lot more sense. I mean, there's a lot of low hanging fruit in the building envelope and your mechanicals. And so totally. If you fix those two things and you still want solar after that, now you'll be a lot closer to net zero than you would have been before just putting solar on to begin with. So I think eventually, and it's happening now, but I think eventually HVAC contractors will kind of be a better guide into reducing energy costs for homeowners than these solar salesmen will.
I agree, and
the non-energy benefits you get along with it.
Totally, yeah. I mean, you can have a lower bill, but if you're still uncomfortable, it's it's kind of like a big whoop. Well, that's a perfect sort of segue. I mean, some of the longer term things that we really want to get into is so right now the thing's called U.S. Heat Pump Summit, and it's HVAC and plumbing, obviously. Because of what we're talking about here, we really want to add solar and electrical to it. And then, we're already getting into some of the insulation world. Ken Allison from IDI Insulation is going to be doing really great training. And I don't know if for those who don't know Ken, he's really he's a really good trainer. And I was on the phone with him. He says, I'm just trying to prevent moron contractors, guys who just show up and spray more insulation on.
That sounds like Ken.
Yeah. I
was with him in Dallas a couple of weeks ago giving a commercial training. So yeah, Ken's a good friend of ours.
I like it. So insulation is part of it too, but let's talk about solar and electrical. And we really want to, from our trade show perspective, be involving solar and electrical under the same umbrella. So whether or not we change the branding of the whole event, that's kind of a different conversation. But what I want is that you've got one ticket where you can show up and go deep on your particular trade. So you can go deep in some solar content, and then you can go sort of broad in content that's designed to be sort of a mixer, across each of these. And because the home is going electric, and this is because we've got a couple things, a precipitous drop in the cost of solar, like the 2010 to now is like 95+%, drop in the cost. There's some asterisks on the soft cost in the U.S. versus other countries that we're going to skip for now, but just FYI. And then, the home battery, I think, is really coming to the home faster than a lot of HVAC people realize. My talking point on this is, it seems like the number one thing the global economy is trying to work on right now is getting the cost of lithium batteries cheaper. And there's a bunch of different chemistries out there. They all have their own sort of eccentricities on cost or weight and stuff like that. But when you combine those two in an environment where we've had very little change of the energy grid from really the energy crisis late 70s, because energy efficiency came around so hard, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, really flat growth. That's just 30 years that the grid aged without a lot of stuff getting replaced. Now, to meet demand, your grid is being built out. The last 10 years have seen record expenses on building out the grid or improving or replacing. And so that's hitting in energy bills. And so all these factors are coming together to make it more compelling than ever for the home to be going more on its own. Because your solar's cheap, your battery's cheap, and if those are cheap, you can say, utility, I don't really need you in the afternoon when you're looking to charge, congestion rates basically, which they should be, and pay for the build out, because that's how utilities make money. They have to spend money to make money. They're rate limited on what they can bill you. So with all that, your solar contractor, shows up at the house because they get the call, hey, my bills are high. First and foremost, do they even know what air leakage is? Do they even have a cursory ability to go look at your, mechanicals in your basement or closet or garage or, whatever, and say, well, there's a 7-inch hole, at the outlet of in the ducts right next to the outlet of your furnace. So we're going to start there. Who knows what's happened down there. And then the big kicker is if they want to go from that furnace to a heat pump, the custody of the homeowner, does the solar contractor have any understanding of how to size the solar generation for the future heat pump load? Because increasingly, all utilities, really, I think all of them, will be going to your time of use rates, because all utilities have more solar on the grid. Solar generates more at noon than it does at 7 p.m. You need the energy at 7 p.m. That's the reason. So it's really important to get that load right and the profile and understand, do you need a battery? Because in the markets like a Texas or a California, which have arrived at similar things with very different mechanisms, because these are all kind of physics problems. That afternoon power price is very, very expensive. And so if you're a solar guy, you can really screw a homeowner, depending on the exact rate that they're on, by adding a heat pump to a solar home, later on down the road. So if you're not accounting for the generation, to make sure you got enough juice for it. And the flip side is true. If you're a heat pump guy showing up and you don't have some familiarity with what's that afternoon pricing, do they have solar now? Maybe it's a really small system, but it's triggered the changeover to a more aggressive afternoon price. Like, all these things are very much happening already in a number of states. I think it's, over the next 10, 15 years, nationwide. So that's why we're going to be bringing, these cross trade connections. You don't have to go across trades in your group, just a little more education. Find your best partner solar installer, your best partner HVAC installer, start doing referral deals. Like, there's a lot that's happening there. Electrical obviously fits in this because they got to get it done, in various capacities. They're getting the call for the EV charger. So I could keep going, but like, you see what I'm illustrating here. It's not HVAC of 20 years ago because of how this technology is changing. And it's not because of politics. It's not because of rebates. Those are obviously huge factors. But, these things are just happening because we've gotten really good at making that equipment.
Yeah, I think, it's all connected, right? And there's an order of operations that, the way that things should be done. And as you're talking about that, I was thinking of, the last company I worked for was an engineering firm in Raleigh. And there was a company we did a lot of work with that was a solar installer. But they also had a building science team as well, where they did ERS ratings and building forensics. And so I think, like, they were so far ahead of their time. Like, if they're going to sell solar, they can go in there and say, like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense right now. Let's fix this first, so that you're not mad at me after I put your solar in and it's not doing what you want it to do. So yeah, I just think, like, if a lot of these companies are really going to be successful and build trust, like, they have to have more knowledge about the rest of that house and where that load's going to pull from.
Totally. And some of these things just go to, unfortunately, every contractor that shows up at a house, is 9 out of 10 times met with skepticism, which is, unfortunately earned by the industry, and the industry being all home services, unfortunately. So, those little things you can do to not sound smart, but, be smart and understand for your sales team how to communicate it. There's all kinds of nuance that, at the summit, a person like Hal Smith from Halco, up in the Rochester, New York area, he really gets into all the details on this. I mean, on what the sales people should be doing, what the technicians should be doing. They do a lot of spray foam stuff. A portion of their trucks are equipped with that. They're really looking more comprehensively and thinking pretty strategically about how we make that pencil. And Hal's built his company. He's kind of in his knowledge phase of his career. So he's that's a good one. That's a good session to get a lot of behind the scenes info on. So yeah, I mean, it is all connected. There is an order of operations, but the other like talking point I have is, as any home service contractor, but especially, if you're, let's say, HVAC, solar, or also plumbing, because you get an urgent call as a plumber as well, it's a very special thing to be invited into someone's home to say, I don't know what's going on. And when you get that call, it's your duty, and it is your business model to maximize the amount of value you can bring to that customer from that call. Now, that doesn't mean you have to shove everything down their throat that half an hour. It could be 5 years that call turns into. But the more you can be understanding that big picture, the more you can be talking more comprehensively, the more, than your competitors, the more you can be getting them to understand what's the full picture cost I'm looking at to really get my home running right, not just my fix today. And everyone's taken their car in and had that one clicky noise or, loose rattle. And then you realize there's 14 other things wrong.
Yeah.
And you're scared, but you do feel a little better, rolling away going, okay, I actually know what I'm dealing with here. And I'm going to address it at some point or whatever. So that's kind of how we see things. I mean, ultimately, I'm the messenger. I'm trying to bring, voices that are far more knowledgeable and experienced than myself together. But with this perspective, that I'm sharing, that cross trades matters more than ever. Connecting your technical and your business side matters more than ever. And having an understanding of this new technology coming down the road matters more than ever.
Yeah, well, I think it's great that you're taking this on. There's definitely a need for it. It fills a much needed gap, especially looking where things are going in the U.S. as far as heat pump technology. And, heat pumps are more of just it's a wider, it's a wider category than you really think. It's not just heating and cooling systems. I mean, heat pumps are in water heaters now. I mean, heat pumps are in dryers now. So the technology is just used for, more things than we used them for in the past. So it's important to have an event to kind of bring everybody together to talk about it and see how to best use it. So
totally.
Yeah, thanks for taking it on.
Yeah, well, they're even in Teslas now for those that didn't know, because your resistance heat.
The heat pumps, exactly.
Yeah. We actually had a few Tesla people come to the first event, so I don't know what. I didn't get a chance to talk to them, but I don't know what they were sniffing out. Yeah, no, it's been fun. I mean, it's been cool, and it's been at this point, I've worked in a number of different industries in my software career, and then really decided to focus in on the world of energy. But solar is really great. Nothing against solar, but I've now kind of really built a broader network. I mean, the job of organizing an event is sort of build a network. So I've met a lot more HVAC people now at this point, and it's really been nice how welcoming of an industry I found it to be.
Sure.
And it's for better or for worse, telling someone you're an HVAC doesn't pick up the chick at the bar. So the flip side of that is everyone who's here really wants to be here. And I think it really comes through when I go to these events and meet folks, like yourselves, and seeing how Retrotec, is here to support the industry and works well with other players that are doing similar things. And it does really strike me as above average, collaborative, above average welcoming. And I think it's a really great foundation to be pushing, some of these directions that I see happening in the marketplace and with the technology. And we're just out here to try to help folks, make a little bit better money, have a little bit less stress, have homeowners be a little bit happier. And the way the technology is coming together, part of my goal is obviously that we've got, a benefit of, see, Sam's power just went out on his lost his studio light. What I was just going to say is we've got a little better benefit of the efficiency and, how much energy we need, as at least the residential portion,
looks like Sam could use a backup battery there.
Sam could use a backup battery.
Maybe my lab needs some solar.
Yeah,
be a good day for it.
So, but yeah, I'm trying to think what else is interesting. I mean, efficiency is this kind of dirty word a little bit, because no one's going to call you up to like, oh, I need a higher COP, come change up my equipment, but at the grand scale, there was a time, so I'm out here in California. I know a lot of energy folks out here, and this senior energy guy out here told me, so there was a time in the 70s where PG&E had plans. PG&E's are the big state utility here. PG&E had plans for a nuclear power plant like every 50 miles up the coast, because when you graphed out the growth rate of California in your post-war era, and the growth rate of electricity needs with resistance heating and incandescent lighting, and the rate we were building buildings. That's what they were sort of planning, which is pretty hard to imagine at this point. And then you kick in the efficiency goals, and you've got this dramatic multi-decade flattening, of demand growth, despite doing all kinds of other things. So it's really it's the ticket. I mean, it's much harder to generate electricity than it is to use it a little more efficiently. Data centers, all that stuff, kind of kick in a new angle. But that's all a different thing. But I'll stop there at the risk of making this even more nerdy.
I also wonder why do we always build data centers?
I think we were doomed to be nerdy at the very beginning when we started this whole podcast idea. So it's okay.
Well, to Ben's question, it's a lot. I mean, cost of electricity is their biggest cost by a phenomenal amount. So if it's Arizona and you can get cheap land and just put your giant co-located solar panel installation, that does go pretty far for what they're looking to do.
Yeah, nice. I see, all the cooling and everything. It's a big load.
Totally, yeah.
With AI these days too.
The Pacific Northwest has really struck pretty hard with that, because the temperature is moderate, their power is really cheap with hydro, and they're not quite as water sensitive as the Southwest. But the talking point for the residential contract, I'd say, on the data centers is it's not, it is another competitor purchaser of electricity, so it's a market. They have some effect on price, but they're doing a lot of generation on site because of just the challenges of actually getting that much juice somewhere. So because of that, it's not as quite as big of an impact as you would maybe think. There's only so many places that have the square footage for a data center that are also next to like advantageous point on a high capacity transmission line. The grid's a physical thing. I mean, you have a lot of limitations of where you can put stuff.
And plus all the all the residential new construction that still occurs today too. I mean, I was reading an article yesterday. Actually, now it's actually cheaper to buy a new house in a lot of places rather than an existing one, just because of some of the incentives that builders can offer.
Oh, interesting.
Just to have direct control of it. Yeah. So now, I mean, that's just going to fuel new construction even more. And 15 years ago, here in North Carolina, we have Duke Energy. We switched from a peak summer load to a peak winter load just because of all the heat pumps that we have going in with all the new construction that we've had, plus a lot of them switching from gas to heat pumps in existing homes. So we actually saw that switch happen. So yeah,
totally.
The grid is a real thing.
Yeah, and people say, oh, the grid can't handle it. And like the simplest answer is, well, we built the whole thing from scratch, man. I mean, they couldn't handle your 1970 load in 1920, but the more like realistic answer is, it's 8,760 hours in a year. Your 8760 report is like your generation report for solar. And out of that, if you're looking at 3-4 afternoons in August and 3-4 mornings, I guess, in winter, that are your coldest and hottest days of the year, it's something like 1% of the entire year or less than. Obviously you could have some outlier years and whatnot. But 99% of the time, there is just an abundance of ability to generate power. And when you look at the wholesale power pricing, on the grid, even in a place like California, which has expensive transmission costs because of, degraded grid, wildfires, over time, things. Yeah. I have a friend who trades power, and which is like a real job, energy trader. It's like actually needed on the grid. He's not just like some vampire. And I mean, he said like most of this summer it's been negative power pricing from like 11 to 4 on all the nodes in Southern California, because there's just so much juice coming off the solar, and you don't know where to put it. So this idea that the grid can't handle it is like a nice talking point when there's one news headline about a brownout or something. But that's really more about where do we need to strategically be in batteries, to fix these. Yeah,
it's like a management thing, not a capacity thing. Yeah.
Correct. It's totally not a generation capacity thing. It's much more around a little bit of smoothing out, when that demand is happening, and batteries are great for that.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so there's a huge need for what we're all doing here. So.
Totally. Yeah. So be a savvy HVAC contractor, to be a savvy HVAC contractor, I think in this next era of, how homes are handling electricity, having some familiarity with that 24-hour, footprint of generation, if it has solar, and the 24-hour footprint of demand, of the building is something you need to account for. And then say, hey, solar could be a good intervention for you. Or, hey, we're going to, maybe work on the timing of your heat pump and work with a thermostat that, can maybe pre-cool a little bit, from your noon to 4 kind of thing. And maybe step off the gas just a little bit, in that afternoon. Maybe there's some gain at the margin. So those things are just as important, I think, as pulling out, that Retrotec blower door from behind Sam's booth there. He'll share his address at the end of the podcast, so you can come see that. But yeah, that comprehensive look at the home has just kind of never been more important, is I think the punchline of all these things.
Yeah,
sure.
Like what percentage of installers now do you think know the importance of sizing it correctly and everything?
It's a good question. I mean, Again, I don't know if I have quite enough pulse to give you really good data, on that. I think, the sizing correctly topic obviously is something that gets discussed a lot. But I guess my point is you might size correctly, but if you're still hammering the thing on a hot afternoon, what's that person's power rate? The cost of power at that time is kind of what I'm getting at. But I think there's still work to be done, because we're a little bit in the building science bubble, of people that Sam and Ben, you and I see at events, and the contractors we talk to. So that's really why we're trying to connect the technical portion of the US Heat Pump Summit with the business portion, because it's a lot easier to get guys to show up for hey, this contractor just made 10 million bucks and you can too, learn how.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Then like, did you know the latest changes to manual J's, like latent calculations?
Yeah, I think the whole issue with system sizing is the bar is still very low. I mean, you have everybody that's, on a scale from not doing load calculations at all to the ones that are, fine tuning them the best that they can. But I mean, a lot of them in the middle are, using manual J software, but fudging the numbers because they don't trust it to oversize it. Back when I used to review them for our energy provider here, I saw a lot of that, like putting all kinds of internal loads that didn't exist and degrading the insulation just to make the system bigger because they were scared. And then plus there's, people that think, oh, well, I'm putting a 2-stage or I'm putting a communicating system in, I can oversize it now. And I was like, well, no, that defeats the whole purpose of even having it if you do that. So we're still fighting that battle too, to try to get the right information out there.
Yeah, what are you guys seeing with new tools like Conduit and Amply coming along that are, that little bit more automated, kind of lower the bar a little bit to getting it done? Do you think that's, making a dent in that, or is it still kind of ultimately because manual J kind of oversizes for heat pumps, like you still end up with some of the similar challenges?
I mean, I think that definitely helps. But I think, step one is caring. So you have to, I mean, if the contractors, I mean, they have to even, put forth an effort to size it correctly instead of just doing, what the last guy told them to do, sizing it, 500 square feet per ton. So we still have so much of that going on, especially in a lot of the big, a lot of the big tract builders that are, all over the country. That's just, they take the lowest bid and that's what they do because it takes time and effort to do a manual J. So, after it's all said and done and the house is sold, it's not their problem. But, like I said, to do it right, you have to care first. So we gotta get there.
You can't just kick the can down the street.
Yeah. Well, and I just go back to the same thing. I mean, the reason why we've connected the business with the technical at this event and continuing to try to with our future efforts, it's really around, like, if you think about who's leading these companies, it's largely folks who came up through the trade, which is great for a lot of your technical stuff, but then there's a bit of a gap on that sort of business training. And ultimately, like, the first question that you're going to ask as, really saying, how do we really run this business well is, does our work actually stand up? If you're running for the business for the long run, you're looking to have your lowest warranty claim, rate, your lowest callback rate and all these things. And then everyone always would say that they would be anyways. But if you take a really, detailed look at that, it's things like, hey, if we commission the system and we use a product like MeasureQuick and we can send some data, back to a manufacturer, I would love to see manufacturers extend warranties, longer, for that. Can that, data be, plugged into a Service Titan or some of these new AI tools? NoSo Labs is a new one that's, going to be at the summit that does a bit of this, tracking and just pulling together a lot of data points. And so, 5 years down the road, 3 years or 1 year, or hopefully not 1 month later after that install, when a customer calls, does your customer service agent, be able to have that data on screen and say, okay, well, we know the system was set up right. So, I think there's maybe something else going on. I have some maybe real data coming off the equipment that I can look at, while I'm on the phone with that customer. And triage, do we need to send someone, or is this maybe something that can be done remote through the equipment? If we send someone, can we send the junior guy, or can we send a senior person? Does this look like really a big problem? And if you really look at, that from a business lens, it's the same thing. It's how do I when I get invited to the home, how do I, provide the most value over the long run? And then how do I spend the least amount of money, to maintain that relationship and that home? And doing it right is how you spend the least money to maintain it. So
and marketing too. I mean, like, that word of mouth marketing is the best you can get. And so if you build trust with that client, I mean, they talk to their friends, they talk to their family. Everybody lives in some kind of dwelling, right? So whenever they come across an issue, like, oh yeah, I have this guy that actually, is doing a great job with me. Hasn't really needed to come out since, so I'm comfortable. So, I mean, that's really what you want to try to shoot for.
Yeah, and even just a little bit of education of, we're in coastal area, like, it's pretty humid, but it's pretty cool. So it's like sneaky humidity. You don't totally notice it. But like just get the house down to 40.
Our humidity is very offensive.
Yours is pretty noticeable.
It's there all the time.
Yeah, the bar's so the bar's lower and higher. It's like if I can get the house to 70, then thank God. But I'll take the drips. But I guess can you fix those too? But yeah, like here, educating someone and saying, hey, just spitballing, but hey, can we just leave this dehumidifier in your house for a week? Just so you can see what having your home at 50% humidity versus 75, feels like. And by the way, your clothes you're not gonna throw out the back of your closet for mold, which we've done. Do. So where's going with that? We're talking about. I sort of lost my train of thought there, but just the business connecting with good work. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, so like a lot of the solar equipment will report its real-time status, and it's like a fun trick for homeowners, but the contractors can look at it too. So you could have an inverter that goes down because you got DC power coming out of the panel, goes an inverter. Eventually, I hope this just goes all DC, straight from the panels down to your DC motor in your heat pump. But you can see if an inverter goes offline and say, okay, well, we're going to come out and fix that, and I'll take it off. Oh, is it really broken? Well, I'll take it off the roof and I'll show you it's burnt up. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Those are the kind of things that, I'm not up to speed on if, how many pieces of HVAC, heat pump, water heater equipment do that. But increasingly, they're in a position to report status and, say, hey, this thing's short cycling or, there's something going on here. We're going to come out and take a look proactively, no charge, things like that. I mean, over the long run, if you're trying to build a business, not just do something for 3 years and try to have an appealing sales number and flip it to the next guy, those are just going to be the things you're going to do. And the more we can help educate people and put contractors in front of audiences that have done those things, that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, awesome, man. I'm excited to go to the summit.
Ben's pumped up, man.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
So I'll be there in November. Looking forward to it. I'll be there as an attendee for sure. And then, hopefully for next year we can kind of work together and see how we can get involved.
Absolutely.
And help you out a little bit
more. That'd be awesome, man.
Yeah,
doors obviously open.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
So, very cool. And then the final thing I'll mention, we're launching a newsletter called the Heat Pump Edge. So it's the Heat Pump Edge, like the edge of the table.com. And that's a newsletter that's going to go out a couple times a week. And it's really just to try to complement all the same stuff we're talking about here. Because what's the best part about the event? It's a really fun 2 days, in person with a lot of great people. What's the worst part? It's only 2 days. And 6 months later, you forget everything you heard. We will be recording the sessions, so you will be able to watch them, but that takes time. And so, the idea is that, newsletter can be kind of a consistent feed of information along the same vein. A little bit more on the business side. It's probably going to be, at least for the start, covering HVAC and plumbing stuff. So we haven't started sending it. You can drop your email in now. This month, we've got a writer coming on board to help with that. And just trying to fill out, some of these gaps that we see in the information landscape for contractors that are trying to do it better.
No, awesome, Brent. Cool. I appreciate all the work, man. It's a tough
appreciate
effort.
Having me on, and appreciate what you guys are doing too. It's it takes all these roles for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to checking out the newsletter, and hopefully we can contribute and help it out somehow.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'll provide all the links and everything you mentioned in the show notes and everything, and all the call outs to Joe Madosh and everyone else.
Absolutely, yeah. MeasureQuick's been a big support. I've got a really, really fun picture of Bill from Retrotec and Joe from MeasureQuick. They sort of split an exhibit table at the first summit, so they're kind of crammed into the sort of like lobby area of the student union, but they're smiling, and a selfie with them, and it's.
I mean, that right there sounds like a party. So
it was. Yeah.
Oh man.
So, anyways,
awesome.
Well, I don't know. I mean, do you guys have any other things you want to cover? We've kind of covered a lot of the main stuff from the event. Like I said,
I think we solved a lot of the world's problems right here.
Exactly.
Within 45 minutes. So.
November 18th, 19th, Worcester, Mass, usheatpumpsummit.com. And I like to leave like one little nerd fact at the end of these if I can offer, Sam. So, like I said, I'm coming from the energy world, and I think contractors need to know not a lot, but like a little bit about these things to answer homeowner questions about the grid or energy or whatever. This one's not that useful for a homeowner, but it's a fun fact. So, as we've been talking about, demand on the grid goes up and down through the year. And so utilities have built peak power plants to be able to turn those on your hot summer afternoon, in particular, like the big cooling load, et cetera. And so those are essentially just, natural gas power plants, which is a big jet engine that, sits in a building that gets turned on to ramp up and provide that power. Increasingly, we're turning to batteries to do that. So it's a big bank of batteries that, sit outside and, are able to be turned on. And the interesting fun fact is you kind of think, okay, well, it seems like the same thing. It can take a half an hour to an hour to get one of these natural gas power plants up to speed because, think about your airliner. When you're sitting there, they start turning on the engines. It's a whole process.
Yeah, the warm-up period, yeah.
And those things are designed to be turned on pretty fast because you got to keep the passengers moving. These ones in a natural gas turbine, is way bigger. I've never run one. I'd love to. It'd be really fun. Seems pretty sick. I'd love to see one, but they still take a little bit of time to roll up. And what's interesting about batteries is they're unbelievably faster to respond. So you're talking about less than a second to turn on, like a megawatt of batteries. And because of that, you can start using them for all kinds of different things that you couldn't necessarily even use, a natural gas plant for. So they can respond better, they're performing. I mean, I think we had, I forget the exact one, but it was like 10-15% of all of California running on batteries for like 2 or 3 hours, this summer, a couple times in the evening, just based on how the weather and demand all came together. So it's here. I mean, this is not a future thing, and the technology is just outperforming. So
yeah,
there you go.
And I think what the EPA, they require those, whatever kind of power source you're using to generate, it has to be 12% more than what the actual load is. So they actually have to generate that much more electricity than what the load is at that time.
So you'd be talking about particular independent system operators, like jurisdictions like CAISO would be the California one, or ERCOT in Texas.
Yeah,
and then
that's what it is in North Carolina here for Duke Energy. I think the Utilities Commission. I think it comes down from the EPA though. This is at least from a few years ago when I actually worked for an energy consulting firm.
Maybe
but yeah, I think there was I think the EPA required a 12% difference between the peak load and then what's actually generated, just to be able to have that backup in case it's needed.
It'd be some part of some capacity planning process. Each utility jurisdiction does a little differently. But the fun fact is that like California and Texas California's not like super, the California CAISO like planning process isn't as California as you would think. Like actually, as far as I know, like PJM, the Mid-Atlantic, is maybe like even more capacity planning based. Because whatever, that gets into some of their history that actually involves like Enron, like screwing California and how they changed some stuff after that. Yeah. But Texas is, pretty much free market. They have some bounds on what the equipment has to meet for performance. But you can plug in like your F-150 and try to make money. You're probably not going to make money doing that, but like you could do that. So they don't actually have the same like capacity planning thing in Texas, but in North Carolina, it sounds like obviously it's your area. You're familiar with it. So yeah, it's interesting how it all comes together.
Awesome. Yeah, well,
good stuff.
I've been looking at installing solar at my house and looking at batteries and everything. So at some point I'll have to reach out outside
Absolutely.
of this.
Yeah. Have you run a blower door test yet, Ben? You might know a guy.
Oh, you just called him out.
It's like
that's going on your performance review.
It's like the landscaper whose lawn is just out of control or whatever. It's like
totally
his own lawn.
Totally true. Well, it's been nice talking with you guys.
You too.
EOCpumpsummit.com. Check it out. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you in November.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good.
Cool.
Awesome.
See ya.